Hey, hi, hello. Welcome back to Trail Society, produced by our friends over at Feisty Media. I'm your host, Corrine Malcolm, and today's episode would not be possible without our incredible support behind the scenes at Feisty. Thank you to the amazing women who keep this show moving like a well-oiled machine. Give them a follow on Instagram at feisty_media, and check out the website for more information on the other Feisty podcasts. You can do so over at feisty.co. Today's guest is actually a repeat guest for Trail Society, which does not happen that often. It's with the one and only Carolina Rubio-MacWright. She was on episode 69, so if you want to go back in time and listen to that, it might be a great precursor for this conversation. Carolina is a Colombian artist, immigration lawyer, climate activist, and ultrarunner. Her experience as an immigrant and immigration attorney opened her eyes to systems of oppression and how they intersect with people's freedoms. And her creativity led her to found Touching Land, a nonprofit where participants learn their legal rights using somatic practices and mindfulness as a tool for community building, collective grounding, healing, and power. They do so by running, making tamales, doing ceramics work. It's really, really cool. Today we get into it. This conversation is emotional, messy, cathartic. It's two friends catching up and diving into what's going on in our communities and how that intersects with sport. They cannot be pulled apart, and sport is inherently political. You may cry with me, but I hope you leave the conversation with the optimism that Carolina exudes throughout adversity. I will say there is a little cursing throughout this animated conversation if you are listening with little ones. We'll dive into the interview. Carolina, welcome back to the pod. I think you're our first ever returning guest. How are you?
Yeah. Hello. I am all right. How about you?
As soon as I said that, I was like, that is a loaded question right now. I feel like we can be honest. You and I are pretty messy together, and I would say almost always incredibly honest with each other. There's no holding back usually. Life is lifing, I guess. It's a Friday, and we're making choices to protect some self-care as we head into a weekend, but I mean, you know everything. The podcast mostly knows everything. We've been going through an IVF cycle. So my hormones are like exponentially crashing right now, which means my brain is firing on all cylinders. And I haven't cried in like the last 6 hours.
Oh, yay. Although crying is good, but I'm kind of tired of crying, if I'm honest.
Yeah. So in that regard, how are you doing?
This week better, but It's been a really hard couple of weeks. It's been really like, my vagus nerve has been like super overstimulated, and I've had to hire someone to help me navigate the nervous system, and because like I need physical, not just therapists. But it's like when you're living traumas and re-triggering constantly. Like your body, just like your cortisol, your body, and like running's just not enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this has been a theme of the podcast. People are going to be like, wow, you guys are talking about stress a lot recently. But it turns out we talk about what we know, and we know stress as we enter 2026. So, yeah, it's not just the running. It's the everything that you need to line up to put your best foot forward so that you can do the work that you're doing day in and day out to lighten things up ever so briefly, and then we'll get nitty gritty again, and we'll be in our feels for the remainder of the podcast, I'm sure, is that I'm asking everyone the same opening question this year, and it's simply, what is something you wish people knew about you? And I'll go first. If I wasn't doing the work I'm doing right now, I think I'd be a farmer, and I would just wear coveralls every day, and I would be in a field, and I would have lambs, which Chloe told me I can't have lambs because they get eye infections, but I would have lambs, and I would never answer an email ever again. How about you?
I mean, I would join you in that farm, but I'm obsessed with bugs, which I think obviously, because I send you random like bug pictures.
Yeah, episode 69, if you missed it, Carolina and Hillary go deep on bugs for a bit. So you guys can listen to that and then come back to join us now.
Yeah, I love bugs. I just took a very needed break. And in that break, the highlight of my vacation was finding a stick bug. And I played with the stick bug and I showed it to all the kids. And like, I could not believe how cute and tiny the little face of the stick bug was. And it was, magical. My favorite moment of my vacation with my family and friends.
Oh, I love it. I need it. So she'd be hanging out with bugs more. She would be working with bugs. She'd be in a museum of bugs. She would be following bugs along the trail, but bugs would be the center of your life.
Bugs would be the center, yeah. And I think I want to know everything about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. I think we can still bring this in to what you do. For people who do not know you, and again, go back and listen to episode 69. I do think you're our only recurring guest, which in my mind is really exciting. But for a little background context for what we're about to dive into, can you tell people who you are and what you do, which is a really maybe hard thing to summarize, honestly?
Yes. I think the main thing is I'm very curious. And I go all in wherever I go. But I am an immigrant. I'm an immigration lawyer. I'm an artist. And I run a nonprofit where I teach immigrant rights with somatic practices. So feeling your body, because laws live in bodies and in people, they're not just written. And so for me, in order to challenge conventional laws that were systematically built to oppress specific groups of people, you have to feel it in your body to recognize when laws need to be challenged, like slavery or segregation, or for instance, ICE in the current atmosphere. So this is what I do. I do somatic legal education through running, through food, and through clay, through artistic practices. We're also doing climbing now. And so I'm an ultrarunner, and I adore ultra running and the community. And so I feel like I hit the ground running with ultra running, and I demand more from the community because I love it and I feel very much a part of it. I've been an activist and an immigration lawyer for 20 years. So this is I think sums it up. And I'm a mom, I guess, mentioning that too.
Yeah, you're a mom. So Touching Lands is the organization that you run, but you also this past year launched a podcast.
Oh my God, the podcast.
A good friend. Yes. So tell us a little bit about your podcast too, because when people are done here, they need to go listen to that.
Yes. So, and I think, interestingly, so my amazing professional skier friend and advocate is Vanessa Chavarriaga. Please go follow her if you don't. She's also an ultrarunner. And her and I are both immigrants from Colombia. And she's probably one of my best friends. And so we decided for our mental health, and also because there's like a lack of brown and black bodies with podcasts in the space, we decided that we needed to launch a podcast where we talked about trail running and the outdoor state with the intersectionality of everything social justice. So think about climate justice. We're both in the Athlete Alliance at Protect Our Winters. We're very active there. So we felt like it was really necessary to have a space for us where we could talk about all the issues surrounding running and also the politics around running and why running is political.
Did you guys meet through POW?
We met at Dakota Jones's camp.
Yeah.
Which
we talked about, I think, on the last podcast.
I did,
how there was like some reckoning. And you just mentioned, like being critical of things that you want to be better, akin to the running community. I think that's a very American ideal, is to love something like our country and be critical of it and know that it can be better for everyone and know that it can do more. The running community, a running camp, whatever it might be.
100%. And I want to shout out Nate Bender, who, started the camp with Dakota. And he actually helped me build the Running Rights and Land program at Touching Land. And so I feel like that is an example of, calling someone out or in, as Jordan Whetstone says, and having a conversation that is very uncomfortable, and then moving forward and becoming, I'm very close to Nate. Nate is a good friend of mine. And I am so lucky that he was able to be reflective enough and be like, you know what, we messed up, but we're going to fix it. And here's what we're doing. And And I just love that example of a relationship that started rocky, and it was nothing that he did intentionally. And I think that's the hardest part for people to come like get over, the fact that, you know, you have a privilege in your whiteness and a lot of ignorance to these systems of oppression that you've never been affected by, or or you're unaware. It's not your fault, but it's also your duty to become aware, get educated, and then actually do something about it.
Yeah, it's that good intentions can still cause harm. Good intentions can still hurt people. And I think the other part that's really hard for those of us who do come from this like really extreme place of privilege is like getting uncomfy with that defensiveness you might feel when you are called out or called in, and getting over that. And, you know, even like listening to that when it peeks its head up, because it's generally a sign that like, ooh, okay, like I need to reevaluate how and why I feel a certain way so that I can move forward in this conversation.
Exactly. And I think a huge part of that, Corrine, especially in trail running, is that I think there's a lot of people don't want to feel uncomfortable. And I think folks feel like, I don't want to disrupt the status quo because there's something to risk. There's like a risk that you have to take. And what folks have to realize is, yeah, this risk is necessary to build change. Like nobody won something in, it's such a beautiful analogy with ultra running. Like there is a risk and a reward. And if you're not willing to risk it when you go out in the trails, then you're not going to gain the benefit.
Yeah, I mean, ultra running is inherently uncomfortable. If any community should be prepared for this, it should be ultra running. When I reached out to you about this podcast, I was like, what I want to talk about is that how sports are political. And they've always intersected politics since the beginning of time, whether we're ready to admit it or not. And I'm wondering why, from your perspective, why that, like, acknowledging that is met by resistance, and who benefits when athletes or corporations are told to like stay in their lane. Like who benefits from that narrative?
I mean, it's the same 40-year-old white men that run most of these brands. You know, why should they change things when they are being benefited by keep maintaining the status quo? You know, you are going to lose something if you have to give up your seat. You are going to lose something if you have to pass the mic. And running is political. You know, like our sport is young, but I'm really worried about the fact that so many people that are leaders in our community are not speaking up, are not saying something, are not realizing how so many in our running community are hurting and have been isolated and have lost opportunities if you speak up. And folks are defensive and folks don't want to talk if somebody brings up something that is, hits a nerve or calls somebody. And it's been, like it is all political. Like the fact that race directors are not acknowledging the fact that women who make up a big part of the sport have to think twice about going into certain states, because if they have an ectopic pregnancy, they could die. Like these are the stakes. The stakes are so high right now. You know, immigrants that have DACA or that have any sort of sensitive status cannot travel for races. Like I am getting tapped on Instagram all the time being like, do you think this is a race where I could be safe and they're not going to call on ICE on me? Or do they know the police? Or how is it okay for me to run in the space when I know that nobody calls the bigots out, or when they show the Confederacy flag? So it's real. The stakes are high, and it's very unsettling that people are continuing their life like nothing is happening around them.
1,000% agree. And I think it's like we're a sport where it's like we're in rural communities, we're in the middle of nowhere, like we're in spaces that are inherently feel unsafe for folks. And we're going to talk, I think, a little bit later about like what can race organizations, big and small, do to best protect people for all different reasons. But I guess kind of like staying on this like saying something or not saying something kind of space is this idea of So people benefit from not saying anything, right? They benefit because they don't want to disrupt the status quo that has for forever kept them at the top. But what does that do to the rest of the community when these individuals, these corporations, choose to be silent or remain silent instead of, adding to this conversation that does need as many voices as possible?
I mean, I think first of all, it makes us feel invisible, uncared for, which I think is the part that I have had the biggest problem with, that it means that you don't really care about our community. Like when George Floyd happened, it was all performative. It wasn't really intentionally bringing DEI and building change in the sport. It was just trendy. So there's that piece. And then the other is, if leaders don't speak, it essentially gives a pass to everybody else to not speak, right? Because we don't want to get into that messiness, because people are going to be uncomfortable. And I don't want to potentially lose an opportunity with someone if I call them out or if I agree. I mean, like, I'm going to give the example of Kelly Newland speaking out about Burrito League. And look, I love Burrito League as a concept because it's like the stupidest thing on earth, and it's such a trail running dumb shit.
We're into stupid shit.
Like, we like stupid shit. Like, I am all in for stupid shit because, like, I love that. However, the timing, like it's like the timing of it is so poor. You're talking about burritos in a time when Hispanic communities are being directly attacked. You're talking about a segment that you're going to run every day for 30 days as many times, meaning ICE can show up there and be like, let's look at these leagues and like, who's got a Gonzalez or a Rodriguez name? And,
who looks like
who looks brown or black, who might look, and then instead of leaning into it, like you could have leaned into the moment and being like, you know what, we're going to show up for our communities of color. And we're going to do Burrito League, and we're going to raise funds for a charity, local charity of every single league that we are building through community. Like, instead of leaning into the moment, it became sort of like an attack. And it wasn't an attack. It was a beautiful like call in of like, listen, you guys, like, let's be sensitive about the fact that there's no way for me to turn off my name showing up at a race with like a little button. I actually have to call Ultra Sign Up in order to do that, right? Why don't we build a button? Like, what are race directors doing in order to, maybe you need a buddy system to make sure that this happened. Like, you could have done buddy systems in the Burrito League too. Like, there's so many ways to creatively build and change community. Like, it doesn't have to be calling out on people, And I think that that's the space that people miss. Like, two truths can happen at the same time, right? Burrito League can be super fucking dumb and also really amazing and life-altering and changing for community. But you have to be aware of your surroundings in time. You have to be aware of who's benefiting. Like, why are we building this, right? It's kind of like
context. Context is important.
Is all. And also intentionality. Like, what's the intention? If you want to build community and you really want to do it intentionally, then like, make sure that it includes everybody. I feel like the gap between the elites and the regulars in trail running is becoming bigger as more initiatives, and like, I hope we can dive into the crowdfunding of Black Canyon, which I think is insane. Instead of pushing brands and race directors to pony up money or sponsors, we're now crowdfunding with community. Like, races are expensive already. I know that we disagree on this, but I just feel like we are really not moving in a way that honors what like the dirtbag trail runner and running is all about, Well,
I think what we can talk about here is like this idea of community, right? We throw the term community around a lot, and I think the pushback with Burrito League was it felt insensitive, right? There's like this like horrific crisis going on that was only brought further into the limelight because two white people were killed. 100%. We know that dozens that we know about. There are people that we don't know about who've been killed by ICE in 2025 and rolling into 2026. So it's like there's this this juxtaposition of there's this thing going on that is disconnected in a way from Burrito League. But it's not if you're talking about building community, if you're talking about anyone is welcome, everyone is welcome, when the reality for so many people is that they're not safe
Nope.
in those environments. And so how do you like recognize that in the moment as a leader, right? As the race organizer, as the event organizer, and say, hey, how am I going to make this about mutual aid? Or about, recognizing that not everyone can be here. So how can we best support those members of our community? Are we frequently an establishment? Are we giving back directly to those members of our community? Are we bringing in our own, security in a way where it's like we're going to protect our members as they run back and forth on I think most of the segments were like less than a quarter mile. And none of that happened. And I think it was this pushback of like, we just want this silly thing to be a really positive, in quotes, distraction for us right now. And I think that is the battle that we're having in Burrito League, outside of Burrito League, in sports.
100%.
I reached out to you because I was like, Carolina, like the Olympics are happening and Barkley's happening and Black Canyon's happening and Tara Ware is happening. And that is all that my feed is right now. And it's not a bad thing. But my mom lives in the Twin Cities. Like, I know that stuff is still going on in Minnesota. I know that they're trying to pass this like insane bill in Arizona. Like, I know that stuff is happening, but we are so pleasantly distracted by things going on. And in my mind, that's the leap in my tangential wander that we're now on. Leap from Burrito League to the reality that we all experience every single day is, where do we allow distraction into our lives? When is that positive? And when do we need to, like, how do we hold ourselves accountable to continuing to not lose sight of what is going on in our local community and in our national community?
Listen, 100%. And I think, in Mangonella podcast, our podcast, we talk about if you are able to maintain this like perfect situation and perfect life in the last like year and even the last month and a half, then you have no Black and brown friends and no immigrant friends, because everybody is aware, and everybody that is of color that is struggling right now is not okay. Like, we are not okay. I'm grateful for like our friendship. I'm grateful for Kelly, for so many people that have been listening to me cry for the last year over things that are real, that are happening in our communities. And that it's not just in the Twin Cities, like you said at the beginning, Corrine, it's happening everywhere. I mean, I have friends that are picked up. And the scary thing is they are jailing babies and families and people that came here the right way. It's not about the right way. It's not about everything that they sold us at the beginning. It is really about getting rid of Black and brown bodies and sustaining whiteness. It is about white supremacy. It is about not disrupting that comfort that folks have. Why are you yucking my yum? I want a place to be happy. Because well, guess what? We've not been happy at all. Like, we have been absolutely triggered. I don't run without my residency card. Like, I know so many...
Which is crazy. Like, that's great. It's crazy, but it is the reality for so many people right now.
It is the reality. It's like, am I going to go to a race that doesn't have an emergency plan of action if something happens to the Black and brown people? No. Am I going to try and recommend it? Absolutely not. I am not going to, because I need to make sure that my people are safe. And it's just really, really hard to feel so invisible. I feel like, as immigrants, as women, as people of color in this space, we feel so invisible because nobody's inviting us to podcasts. Nobody is writing about us. Nobody is calling us and being like, yo, are you all okay? How can we like, instead of getting defensive if you've been called out, like, why not be like, you know what? Tell me how we can make this better. And I feel like that's the piece that has been hard for me, like during the height of these two killings of white people. I really expected leaders in the trail world to say something. And we are keeping track, who's a real ally and who's going to probably call ICE on us. Because that's really what we're talking about in this moment.
Or who you definitely can't trust to not do something type of thing. And I guess that's something that I'd like to touch on here, is this kind of notion of like, what is performative and what is meaningful engagement when it comes to individuals and corporations and race directors. And I do really want to build into the race directing piece towards the end of this, as far as like how can organizations where people are gathering in mass be safe, but maybe from an individual standpoint, for the run influencer, for the athlete, for your neighbor, what can they be doing when it comes to navigating that performative statement to move from that to meaningful engagement?
I mean, I think, like, I will give an example of, and I don't know if this is coincidental or not, but Ron Janji just started a new initiative of $10,000 to build change in the community, in our trail running community. That is actual do the walk and not just talk and put a post and be like, oh my God, we're so saddened by the current state of affairs in Minnesota. That means nothing. Okay, you acknowledged, but like, what are you really doing? What are you, like, I think that, for instance, you having me in this podcast and wanting to share like what my expertise is in the space is valuable, right? You are amplifying my voice and my experience. And no other podcasts are doing that. Like, we are not, like, I think it's been really sad that it took white people's murders for people to really feel like, oh my God, something is really terribly happening here, for folks to really believe us. So I feel like people need to remember or think, am I going to be proud in this moment in 5 years when my children ask me, what did you do during that time, Mom? It must have been terrible. They were like taking people away from the streets and disappearing them, and families couldn't find them for days, and they were dying inside. And I hope that at least you can say, I got into my community. I think there's no excuse for people not knowing where to start. And this is something I get a lot online, where people are like, but I don't know what to do. Like, where do we start? Listen,
there's so many resources
for you to get involved. Like, there's, make sure that you have training. You could go to your local pantry. You can do something as simple as tutor a kid at school, or send a letter to detained immigrants, or put money in their commissary. Like, there's just so many, and also creative ways of supporting community. I love that through my nonprofit, we started Con Amor Always card writings for families detained in Dili. And it's been so beautiful to see local running clubs coming together with a local Hispanic cafe and doing card writing after a run. Like, what a beautiful initiative of action, of care, and of truly building the space that we talk about so much, that is supposed to save the world. Well, it's going to save the white world. Trail running is going to save the white world, but not the world that I want to be part of. Because if you're not talking about me and my experience, and I don't see myself represented, then that's not really the world that I want to be a part of.
Yeah, no, truly. And I think that, I guess maybe stepping back for people, we've like thrown around mutual aid a bunch. And I think that's like, I know that's been an easy way, quote unquote, easy way for us to get involved in our local community here in Seattle, is understanding kind of how can we meet people where they're at, mm-hmm. What do they need? What do their families need if, their sole provider has been picked up by ICE? I live in South Seattle, where many of our schools are not predominantly white, where they've gone into lockdown due to ICE, where we have teachers that are scared, where we have families that are scared to bring their kids to school. And so mutual aid has been that thing that we can lean into. And I'm wondering for people who that might be an unfamiliar term for them, right? Maybe they don't have a big social media platform. Maybe they're not a podcaster. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to do that in their community. What is mutual aid when it comes to supporting people locally?
So mutual aid is listening to what the needs are of others first, right? Like, if you are going to help, it's not, I have some shoes that I can give you. It's not what you want to do, but it's actually directed into what are the needs of the people at the time, right? And so it starts by listening and asking questions, and then seeing how you can be of help. But mutual aid can be as simple as, I have an hour to spare on Monday. I'm going to go and stand watch at the local school, right? And it requires time, and it requires energy. And we all have time, and that is the most precious resource of all. You can donate all the money in the world and it's not going to change your heart. But when you see a family changed by the fact that you took the time to walk them to school and the kid turns around and says, thank you so much, like that changes your DNA. And that forces you to be like, you know what, that was kind of nice. Let me do it again and let me try something else. And so mutual aid is that. And it's also the idea of you being able to tap in if you also need help. It is this idea of we're all part of the community and many hands make the work light. How is that saying?
I think it's many hands make light work.
Yes.
We're
something
there.
like that.
We're on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm the American saying.
Many hands raise the ships of other tides. We can just add them all together.
I mean, listen. That is the idea of like it's really grassroots. So it's not any really true organization or anything. It's mostly networks of people. I'll give you an example. In my community, I have two amazing friends, Matt and Shannon. They're the whitest people on earth, and they have been gathering tampons and diapers and also formula for families that are, have their family members taken and that are detained locally. I have folks that are waking up at 7 a.m. and going outside of a detention center with a bunch of running shoes that I gave them and other community members gave them, and jackets and gloves, because family members are waiting outside in the frigid cold right now. These are kids, little kids, mamas, waiting to see and visit their family members in detention. And so it can be as simple as providing shoes to someone. It can be making a donation. But I've been so touched by the generosity of people and time and care. And it really, it makes me feel so loved and cared for when people take a Saturday morning and they're like, you know what, this is really important for me to stand in this cold in solidarity with you and actually be of service to you.
Yeah, it's giving what you can with what you have. And so that's time, that could be resources, that could be resources be it connection or be it financial assistance, but it's meeting the community where it's at, and that is so key on the local level. It's being involved in your local politics, because they make a huge difference in what happens in your city, including local law enforcement and how they interact with ICE and DHS in your local community. But I guess when we scale that out and we think about the running community broadly, and we think about, so we're no longer, this is not about carpooling kids to school or doing the CVS run for a local teacher who is afraid to leave their home, to help with the crossing guards or watch haven, at detention centers, but our running community and our big and small races alike, be it running through rural areas that might not be historically welcoming to people of color, and or major events, right, where you've got 1,000 runners collectively gathering to run an event. That is in and of itself a target. So what is happening, if anything, with race orgs, and then what needs to happen? So what have you seen in your conversations both regionally and nationally when it comes to how, what are race orgs doing, if anything?
So I've had two race orgs reach out to me. One is an amazing race director, Kim Levinsky with Sasquatch Running, trail running in New York and New Jersey. She hired me to do an emergency plan with her to come up with ideas and systems of care for communities. We developed something called the buddy system. We made it, who in our community wants to be a buddy and who in our community does not feel safe running. And so we can pair you up with a buddy so that you can feel safe in the space, and Kim has been so incredible in making the space more inclusive as well. Not just for para athletes, but also neurodivergent folks. So an emergency plan of action, including what is your relationship with local police, right? If ICE shows up, who's going to intervene? Who's going to talk? Who's going to be responsible? Or are you just going to, provide the roster? Right? I think it's important for race directors to push organizations like Ultra Sign Up to make sure that they have the tools that provide runners the facility to just sign up and then like be able to be invisible.
Yeah, and there are race orgs that have left Ultra sign up for that reason, be it due to gender reasons where you can't opt into either like not choosing a gender or choosing non-binary, or the ability to be invisible, to be anonymous. That has been a big thing. And Rain Shadow running locally here in Washington moved away from Ultra sign up for that reason. They wanted people to be able to not select into any category and or to select to be anonymous so that their personal information isn't readily available.
Yeah, and I think that that's so important. Like some race directors are actually not making their roster public because of that, because they believe that the value of securing people and making sure that they feel safe and that they are actually safe is more important than the camaraderie that comes from like seeing who is running that race. And so I think,
and really the people who care about seeing who's in the race are like the talking heads like me who are like, what are the elites doing? And can we talk about who's going to be at the front of the race? But when you talk about, there are 950 other people on that start line. What are we doing for those 950 people?
Yeah. And I think that that's the piece where, it's important to make sure that that you actually care about us, that you actually make the sport as diverse as, I think we've been fighting for diversity for so long, and it feels like it doesn't really matter anymore. It doesn't really, it feels like for brands and for certain people, like it's not trending anymore. So why should they care? Why should brands highlight people of color or stories, including immigration issues, when it's such an American thing, right?
I mean, most of us immigrated to the U.S. at some point in time. The majority of people immigrated to the U.S. at some point in time. I don't think very few of us can claim indigenousness to,
or were forced by
North
slavery.
America.
Through.
Yes, or you were brought here without any say.
Yep.
In it, which is a whole nother like bag of trauma.
100%. And so I feel like as far as race directors, that's races, making sure that they have plans. Like I've talked to Luke Nelson from Scout as well, and we've had some conversations about how to make that race safe and how to make it so that young immigrants can actually access the sport. Like for me, it's really important. I remember last year, some people that were supporting me with the program, the Running Rights and Land program, were like, well, I guess you're closing the program now. Cause like, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not stopping the program, because this is also about the mental health and the opportunities that immigrants have in order to process their emotions and in order to have access to running. I'm not going to make those opportunities even smaller now when we are at the peak of stress and anxiety. And this is like our one very few tool of community effervescence and collective joy, along with the ability to just kind of chill our nervous system.
Yeah, and it's something I want to dig into. I think that many of us, like, I don't know, endurance sports we're good at sitting with discomfort, but it's also, it can be overwhelming. And I wonder how we lean into like the joy of running, the resistance that can be running, when again we're holding space for these two very different things. The reality that you're living in, where you might not feel safe running where you're running, where you might need a buddy in order to do it, and the joy it can bring you, the escape it can bring you, the space in order to go about the rest of your day that it can bring you. Like, how do we hold those two things?
I mean, I think they're both, like, to me, the way I feed holding all the horrors is really in these races and reminding myself that I'm strong, that I'm powerful, that I have the ability to accomplish things that are only living in my imagination and that I believe are possible. And I think that is such an important piece that we all need to hold right now, that we can believe that good things are going to happen and that there is a better version of the world that we imagine. And I think that that's the piece that I like pushing, like I want to imagine a trail running space where my immigrant runners can show up and be celebrated for their incredible journey of survival, right? Like I want a running space that is welcoming to, my para athlete friends, and that they're celebrated with as much accolades as the people that are running fast. And I think that, we are still blinded by the system that honors how fast somebody is, while not recognizing that there's some people that are not professional runners whose job is not just training, who are holding so much of the world, and who have jobs and who have children and have all these different systems and things, who are also competing at that same rate. Or the person that saved their money's worth the whole year in order to have this beautiful experience with other people. And I feel like those stories are being lost, and those stories are not being honored and truly valued and seen for the magic that really is trail running,
Yeah. And the stories aren't abstract. Like, they are very real and I think very powerful as well. And I don't think it needs to always be about inspiration, but it is like important to see yourself on the trail, to know that you can be there, that you can accomplish this thing. I wonder in the same vein though, and I recently had a panic in which I couldn't get a hold of you, and I was texting our mutual friend Vanessa being like, so Caroline hasn't texted me back in like 3 days. Is she alive? Has she been detained? But I'm wondering, kind of more in this like self-care realm, like how do you navigate staying engaged when the news is so personal and so exhausting? And how do you give yourself permission to temporarily, for necessary reasons, for survival, in a way, check out so that you can come back and do the work with Touching Lands and with these amazing immigrants who are showing up in their community and running and getting to be on that start line?
Man, that's so hard. I mean, it's really hard to give yourself permission, but the reality is I've been doing this for 20 years, and not a lot has changed, and things are even worse now. And now I have to think about my children who are scared that ICE is going to take me at night and disappear me. And, but I'm not going to stop talking. I'm not going to waver. I think that the way that I try to do self-care is, I disappeared for 3 days, and I did.
Scared me.
Like the reality is I have to travel with a different phone because I have I have numbers for immigrants for the last 20 years and information and sensitive information. And the reality is that rules are not being followed. And so it's a risk that I'm not willing to take.
Yeah.
And so forcing myself to go to therapy and not skipping therapy. And I think leaning into community is the most important thing ever. Like the folks that check on me, they might think that checking on me is the dumbest thing, but it is. I feel like they're paying attention and they know the pain and the hurt. I think community, I'm leaning into community so intensely because of that joy, because of, you have to balance the horrors with the beauty. And I think we have to hold it with the same hand. And so for self-care, I think it is the joy, it is community. I'm forcing myself to hold dinners with random people. The last thing I want to do is do dinners because when I am sad, you seek isolation when you're depressed and when you're sad. And so I think my advice is actually do the opposite. Do the thing that gets you out there and makes you be with others, because we need that healing community, and to not shy away from the fact that I'm not okay. We are not okay. Things are not okay, and things are shitty, and we have to feel it, and the only way is through.
Yeah. What are you telling your kids right now? I know you have 2 kids. They're very special. I think especially your son has been trying to process all of this, and there's some very real fear there. And I wonder, what do you tell him? What do you tell him so that he can go about his day, so that he can go to school, so that he can go to climbing and find those moments of joy? Because that to me is what makes it even more real, is that you have these 2 beautiful children who are so greatly impacted and worried for you too.
Yeah, I lie.
Oh, I'm going to start crying.
Sorry. That's where my therapist comes in. And like, I can't tell the truth to my little one because he is so sensitive and he is so aware. I mean, my children, when I started going to detention centers, my kids were 3 and 5.
Wow.
And now they're 14 and 11. And so, you know, this is a reality that they live in. They have friends that are scared. You know, I think that that's the part that has really broken my heart. The kids that have to be so traumatized by seeing their parents not be there, you know, or fear that your parents are not going to be there when you get home is such a really traumatic and awful thing. And the reality is my child is as white as snow. And like, they're not like my kids are super white. And, you know, he was having nightmares of ICE taking me because he knows immigrants are important. And he was like, please don't break the law. Please like follow suit. Please do whatever that you need to do in order to save yourself. And it's really fucked up that my own kid, when I am a lawyer, I'm married to a white guy, I have a residency card, and I can't imagine what these other babies are going through. And these are the babies of your peers, you know, like these are, you know, the gas station man that I just did a power of attorney for so that if he gets separated from his children, someone can take over. His kids go to my school, my kids' school. They're my kids' classmates. And so this is affecting everybody. I talk about the biggest raid before the one in Mississippi during Trump won, which was in Postville, Iowa. And they essentially took away 400 immigrants from that community. It was a small town, but it was thriving because of immigrants, like an economic and cultural value that they bring. And they disappeared all these families. And the community essentially the economy failed, birth rates went down, fertility went down, suicides went up, mental health went down. Like, it is a real collective pain that is happening right now that happened there. And the University of Michigan did a study for 10 years of the effects of this raid. And it's really traumatizing. It's really devastating. And it is the reality that every community is going through around the U.S. because what folks have not, I think, really understood is there are $87 billion given to ICE and DHS. This is not going away. Like, it is so much money. And so they're going to come for us. It's like my lawyers tell me that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. It's not if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when will they detain you.
Yeah, which is, I think, the reality we've been talking about for several years. I mean, since I met you, I think we've been talking about it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I am constantly, I mean, this is why you're an Ultrarunner, I think, too. It's that back and forth lesson of like, you can do incredibly hard things and you are so persistent and you are so gritty and resilient. And that shows up in the fact that, when people are like, oh, are you going to shut down touching lands? We must not be able to do this work anymore. And you're like, no, we're actually going to double down and we're going to find more ways to engage with this community. And I would love, I think, you mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast about the card writing campaign that you guys are doing in New Jersey and New York. But I think it's happening elsewhere in the country now at this point. I think Courtney Olson sent you some cards.
Oh my God, Courtney Olson, what an amazing artist.
She's such an artist.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Very fast road ultra gal. But tell us a little bit about, you first were doing this at the Dilley Detention Center, I think. But there's like this very humanizing aspect of it as well, of you can't bring anything into these places, but these cards can make it into these parents, these families, these children. Tell us about the rationale behind this card writing campaign and why it's so important, because it's such a small act, but it matters in such a big way.
Oh, it's I mean, I think it's multifaceted, right? So when I started going into detention centers in Dilley, specifically Dilley, which is one of the only facilities, Texas is the only state that allows family detention or like indefinite. Some families were there from 8 months to 1 year, detained in that. And we're not allowed to bring in anything. I smuggled stickers, but I made friends with ICE agents, and so they let me bring in cards. And so this idea of writing a card to someone that is detained is, it's such a simple act to make something beautiful and something so human about writing even a few sentences is really important because it humanizes them, right? It is also not just about sending letters to detention centers. We're increasing the campaign and we're actually sending letters to farm workers and also deported veterans. So we're trying to focus on specific groups of immigrants. I'm sure 99% of your listeners don't know that we have an incredibly large number of veterans that have been deported. That is a reality, and it's really a shame and shameful that we have these men that have served for our country and are now deported. There's a beautiful organization in Tijuana that we're working with. And so we want to send letters, but we want to teach people about immigrants and who these people are. They're not just abstract folks. They are kids that go to school with my family. But in this idea of letter writing, of card making, it is an act of you having to talk and make something around community and send this letter to someone that is going to receive it, someone that is shut down from the world. So it humanizes them also in the eyes of the ICE agents, in the eyes of these detention center people that are trying to not feel the feelings that are human, of care, of charisma, of love, of giving. And so in these children receiving these cards and feeling happy that they've been acknowledged, right? That someone out there is thinking about me. Someone out there is taking time out of their schedule to write me a message is so powerful. And it's also something beautiful that they can see in their small beds where they have absolutely nothing. And so everybody wins. We build awareness about the fact that how are we detaining babies? How are we putting them in these, and there's no medical and the conditions are just the most awful you can imagine. That I think part of the problem with so many Americans is they still can't accept the fact that this is happening because it's so absurd that their brain cannot sort of bring themselves to accept that this is happening. And so it's easier to believe folks are lying or exaggerating than it is to actually believe that this is reality.
Yeah, and at the same time, fascism isn't new.
Yeah.
Right? Racism isn't new. Fascism isn't new. This is something that historically, we are repeating ourselves as a country, as a society. Again, but it's really hard to believe that people can be this cruel, but it is it is the reality.
Yeah. I mean, it is. You look at the lynchings of, Black people and you just kind of can't imagine that this was actually something people watched and supported, but yet we are here separating families and people are dying and people are being shot on the streets. And, I find it amazing that folks think it's revolutionary to just post something and not actually move their butts and do something with their bodies, right? I feel like, it is about action. It is about moving your body and doing something and being like, okay, that felt good. I'm actually going to move in action and not just acknowledge what is happening. I think folks need to get more educated. I think you need to reach out to people that are Black and brown and make friends and try and understand and be willing to be uncomfortable, because I think we're all going to mess up. And I think that's the piece that people that have had so much privilege don't understand, how we navigate as Black and brown people in discomfort constantly. When I started running ultras, I didn't even Western states, what is that? I didn't even know. I thought you could enter it, just put your name in. There's so many things that there's a learning curve with everything, but you have to be curious and you have to be willing to look like an idiot and be okay with that discomfort and be like, you know what? It's more important for me to do the deed than to mind my selfish feelings, because this is going to generate change. So when you show up and you care, it has a chain effect, right? If I see a free trail article talking about this and posting, and people that I admire posting about things, and it leads me to believe, damn, maybe I should look into this a little bit more, because it feels like there's something there that I may be ignoring. It has a chain effect. And I think charisma and love and beauty and magic and being honest and standing in your values is the biggest piece of loving each other.
Yeah, I think people like to they don't like to hide behind fear, but fear is an excellent excuse. And I think it was Vanessa who read a quote on one of your more recent podcasts about like being silent. You can still be afraid being silent.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it turns out, sitting on your hands, being silent doesn't take the fear away of speaking out. I guess if I was to give you a genie in a bottle or a crystal ball or something that would provide you with 3 wishes, whatever that might be, what would you like if you could just like, I don't know, maybe it's a magic wand in this scenario. You have a magic wand. You are the queen of trail running for more than a day. What would you try to change or affect? How would you affect change right now? What would be those 3 changes that you would magic wand and they would be a reality?
I would ask for more wishes. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's always your 3rd wish, is to ask for more wishes.
No, I mean, I would love to do something like permanent diversity entries for big races, because I do think if you don't see yourself reflected, you don't think it's possible. I think that is something I didn't quite understand until I started working with younger kids that see me as a hero for running races. And because they're like, we don't really see Latinas. And like, you're a Latina and you're here with us and you ran these things. And I didn't quite understand it until I met these kids from the Hackensack Happy Feet. And so I think I would create permanent entries for including para-athletes, including blind athletes, including everything. I would do that just for the bigger races. I would force brands to have permanent DEI programs that make it possible for not just youth to come into the sport that are diverse, but also folks that are older in the space, that have been in the space. Like I would give Jordan Whetstone an entry to every possible ultra running race in the world.
I'd give her millions of dollars. All of my money to Jordan.
I know. I mean, I think that it really is about investing. It really is about not just doing a story about someone, but actually like putting in the money so that they can do the work. And I think, I love giving this example because when you give some money or you give products or whatnot, people want something in return, right? And when you're a true activist and you are doing mutual aid, like I don't owe you a picture. I don't owe you anything. You're giving me the money and trusting that I know what I'm going to do. And I will do the best that I can do to bring as much change as possible. And sometimes it is not about the number of people that are affected, but how deeply a person can be affected by that, right?
Yeah, it's hard to explain to brands in non-KPI, like key performance indicators. Is that a KPI? Yeah. It's hard to be like, I can't explain the KPI to you, but trust me, this will work.
But I think it's the pushing the imagination, right? I've gotten grants where I'm like, I'm going to tell you if we're successful by the number of smiles that we calculate within this workshop. And like, and I was not rejected. They were like, okay, cool, nice system. And so I think it is also pushing and wishing for more, right? I would love for there to be broadcasting beyond just the top 10 and actually be mindful about the broadcasting of the back of the pack in these bigger races. I would love to make it really easy for people to sign up for races and not have to save for years in order to do their dream races. Especially like people of color. I would love for there to be programs where, and also not just programs for races, but also for brands to actually show us intentionally in their whatever online. Like they just tokenize us. I'm so tired of the tokenization of Black and brown people. So I feel like I would do that. I would do like a race that is just about bugs and stories collected instead of how fast you are. I would love to do
You're
that.
like, mandatory, must come back with at least 12 bugs.
And stories from people. Because I think that's the beauty. You know, like I was talking to someone recently, and it's like, what I love about trail running is the fact that you are out there in the woods by yourself pretty much. And of course, it's different than the elite, right? The elite are like, have cameras and all this other shit and pressure. But like, my favorite thing is the fact that you go on this journey and you collect stories that are like super insane that people trauma dump on you. And then you get to the end of the race and maybe the race director is clapping, but nobody really gives a shit. They give you some sad little wooden medal. You eat a little piece of Rice Krispie or a sad quesadilla. And then you leave and you get into your car. And it's like, that is like the perfect fucking race.
Yeah.
And that's why I love trail running, because it's just like the anonymity, the simplicity, the no frills. If you want people to clap at you, go road run. You know, like that's what I love about trail races and the volunteers and the stories. That's the beauty. And I feel like we need to make it accessible for everybody to be able to feel this joy and this anonymity and this access to the woods that not everybody has.
Yeah. I guess, and for the people who just heard that and are like, yes, give Carolina a magic wand, I am in. There are incredible organizations doing work, have no doubt, locally in your community, in your region, nationally, to try to make some of that stuff a reality. And I would highly encourage you to seek out the people that are doing it and build with them, because we don't have to always reinvent the wheel. We can add spokes to it maybe, or like make it bigger, but there are people doing the work. And if you are inspired by that, trust me, you can find them. Slide into our DMs. We can probably put you in contact with someone as well. And I guess final question, Carolina, before I wind things down and have to say goodbye for the day, which is devastating. And we probably asked you this back on episode 69 as well, but it's my closing question for everyone. And I think it changes over time too for us. And younger self can mean so many different things. It could be you a year ago. And so that is, what is one thing that you know now, February 20th of 2026, that you wish you could tell your younger self?
Oh, man. I think I would change it a little bit. Definitely like continue to be weird is what I said in the last episode. But I think at 44, I feel like I don't mind risk taking. And I feel like I sometimes don't shoot for more. I feel like sometimes I keep myself smaller. I think as women, we are taught to be small so that we don't scare the white man, or the system, or the people with power. And because of fear of retaliation, or fear of being black banned, which has happened all the time for me, I think like continue to be bold and take even bigger risks. Speak your truth. Like I think continue to do that, because in the end, like I think standing in your values and being truthful with what you mean and what you see is more important than making sure people don't feel uncomfortable.
1,000%. And then find more bugs, I think, is like the add-on at all times. Find more bugs.
Yes.
And I guess maybe last thing officially, where can people find you? Maybe not you in person, but find you, your work, Touching Lands. Where can they connect with the work you're doing if they want to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, I will echo what you said. I think, look, you rip the biggest benefit from connecting locally. So like your running club, like you should be making sure that your people that are Black and brown are safe and that they're loved. And like whether you're whoever you are, like you should be doing that just inherently. But people can find me on Instagram under Carustol, Carustol, and under Touching Land, and also under Mangonada, our podcast, which you should all go and listen to. that's where you can all find me.
They don't put out enough episodes. So I think if you all go listen, we can encourage Vanessa and Carolina, who are very busy, to put out some more episodes for us, because they're just a treat. They truly are. And they make me feel all the feels, but they're incredibly important conversations. So we want you to keep sharing them.
Thank you. Yes. Go listen and care about your trails and our climate and our people.
Yeah. We'll leave it there. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you. Love you.
Okay, so I promised you both tears and optimism, and I think we managed to deliver on that, striking a balance during this very wide-ranging conversation with Carolina today. If you want to find out more about Carolina or the nonprofit she runs, you can do so by going over to www.touchingland.org. And as Carolina recommends, get in touch with your local communities. They are the ones doing the work on the ground near you. A huge thank you to our producing partners over at Feisty Media. Follow them over on Instagram at feisty_media and go over to their website, feisty.co, to see what they've got cooking up. The newsletter's, as always, on fire right now. We'll catch you next week, or until then, we'll see you out on the trail.